Hello everybody, this is the Wikstrand. So, Steven Soderbergh has unretired once again. He has retired and unretired from the filmmaking business about as many times as Terry Funk has retired and unretired from the wrestling business. So, this time his unretirement resulted in the movie The Laundromat, which, he felt that he could take a concept like traffic, which he did in the year 2000, and applicate it to the Panama paper scandal about shelf companies and tax evasions and other forms of miscellaneous assaults on the financial systems, and basically make a movie about it. He probably saw The Big Short and said, I can do that, and so he tried to do it. Did he succeed? Not entirely. I would say that The Laundromat is a good movie. The Laundromat has moments that is very, very good, but is hamstrung by a bunch of things that ultimately made the entire thing a bit meaningless, but still a very entertaining bit. Let's take a look at what those are, shall we? This is The Laundromat. Years ago, the financial world was hit with the Panama Papers, which was an atomic bomb landing on them. Basically, it was a lot of shell corporations and tax evasions and shady business practicing that was hacked from this place in Panama, and then all these documents came out and showed who had trying to avoid taxes and who was doing shady business deals and stuff like that. And this is represented with a couple of different shorter stories. One of the most important ones is, of course, Meryl Streep, who loses her husband in a boating accident and then are trying to fight with the insurance company and stuff like that, which also brings her to St. Kitts and Nevis for a really funny sequence when she's talking about to their lawyers and stuff like that. And we also have The Fall of Bushi Lai, which was a very powerful Chinese politicians. And we also have Jeffrey Wright, who is banging his daughter's roommate for reasons, and some other stuff too as well. And in between these stories, we have Antonio Banderas and Gary Oldman, who are sort of our narrators, you could say, who are explaining how shell corporations work and how you can get away with it and stuff like that. It's a little bit like the sequences in The Big Short where Margot Robbie in a bathtub explained how mortgages works and stuff like that. And they're doing this, sitting on the beach or having outrageous suits and stuff like that. It was kind of entertaining, and I really like these two guys, so far so good. What I hoped this movie would have been was that all of these small little stories would contribute to bring out a bigger picture of this world of shady business practice and stuff like that. But a lot of sequences simply ends, and no one comes back to explain what happened later. And this is especially true about the Bushi Lai sequence and the Jeffrey Wright is banging his daughter's roommate, which makes them feel a little bit redundant or unnecessary. And it felt like large sections of this movie was kind of irrelevant. And despite this being a very well-made movie, despite a lot of really good actors, I don't think I've ever seen Meryl Streep in a bad role, and this is not going to be one of them. She not only plays the widow who is fighting these legal battles and stuff like that, she also appears as a Panamanian woman who is kind of the proxy for the hacker who actually ended up stealing all of these documentations. I would actually have liked to see more of a story of the hacker and how they came across the Panama Papers and stuff like that. A little bit like Snowden or something like that. Maybe having that as a story rather than these stories that are good, but is handled in a little bit weird way and made for some unnecessary expectations for what's going to come next. I hope that this movie was going to evolve a little bit like Traffic, in the sense that it would be different stories that wouldn't necessarily touch each other that much, but they would reference each other, and you would, have some interplay with one another, and they would create a bigger picture of the whole scenario, and you would understand it from different perspectives. We didn't really have that here. There are almost watertight proof chambers that these stories exist in, and that didn't help this movie. If just for comparison's sake, I think that The Big Short was a much better movie, made in the same serious but slightly comedic vein as this one. I think this movie could have benefited from, focusing more on one story and one outcome or something like that, not having these hodgepodge of different stories. When it comes to the acting, it's really good. Meryl Streep is fantastic, Antonio Banderas is always fun, and I really like Gary Oldman, even though his German accent, which he's supposed to have in this one, is not the best German accent I've ever heard, but on the other hand, it's a really tricky accent to do without it sounding phony. Do I recommend this movie, ultimately? Yes, I would say that I do that, because it is ultimately a very well-made movie, and it has a serious subject that it tackles in an interesting and entertaining way, even though it could have been done better. It has a bunch of very good actors putting on very good performances, and the movie has a couple of comedic moments that's actually really funny, and it has a bunch of serious moments that is, in some cases, really heart-wrenching. If there is something I absolutely hate, it is tax evasions. I hate people who can afford to pay taxes but choose not to do that because of pure greed. And people who, tries, really hard just to not contribute to society is something that I find absolutely appalling. I hate them for some reason so much. So I was really on board with the whole thing from the start. Do I necessarily think that this is, gonna change the world or anything like that? Not necessarily, but I think that this was a more effective way of presenting these kinds of questions and these kinds of problems than what a documentary would have done in the same way. The movie has a good pace, it has some really fun and entertaining side characters, including James Cromwell, Robert Patrick and David Schwimmer. I give this movie 62 points. It is a good movie, clearly not one of Soderbergh's best movies, but an important one, and a movie I, not going to rewatch over and over again, but for one viewing it was totally worth it. So I'll see you from so and so reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching, thank you very much.